Hey everybody! Today we're going to make mini apple pies. Let's get baking. So for today's recipe, first for the pie crust, you're going to need 2.5 cups or 356 grams of flour, 1 tablespoon or 10 grams of sugar, 4 to 8 tablespoons or 37 milliliters to 75 milliliters of water, 1 egg for egg wash, 2 sticks or 1 cup or 226 grams of unsalted butter, and 1 tablespoon or 10 grams of sugar. And then for the apple filling, you're going to need 1 teaspoon or 3 grams of cinnamon, a splash of lemon juice, 1/4 cup or 60 grams of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons or 20 grams of white sugar, and 2 Granny Smith apples. So let's get started. First things first is we want to make the pastry dough for the pie crust. So we're going to take our butter and cube it. Then into a food processor or a bowl, go ahead and add half of the flour along with the salt and sugar. Get that well combined and mixed together before adding your butter. The reason I'm using half of the flour instead of the full amount of flour at first is because 1, it's much easier to combine the butter with half of the flour at first, and then 2, for those who would be using a bowl, half of the flour starting off is going to be much less messy getting that butter mixed in really well with the flour. You're going to know when to add the rest of the flour once most of the butter is not visually seen and you've just got these buttery clumps of flour in your bowl. Now for this next part, I definitely could have kept the bowl on the food processor, but because this is my first time making pie, I didn't want to accidentally overwork the dough, so I'm just adding a little bit of water at a time and using my spatula to push the flour up against the edges of the bowl, not really stirring it, but just pushing it up against there to start creating clumps, and then just adding a little bit more water at a time. Now I did make a rookie mistake though, because I should have added the rest of the water, but it is what it is, at this point. And then once you're happy with the dough, go ahead and dump it out onto a clean working surface and start forming it into a ball. And this is where I really started wondering if I should have added more water, because while it was in the bowl, it looked pretty good. And then once I got it out there and I started working with it, I was like, yeah, this is pretty crumbly, but again, it is what it is. And then this is for 2 pies, so we're gonna go ahead and cut that ball in half and form 2 other balls. And then get those covered with saran wrap. And then here I'm like, I start pushing it down and look at my hand. I was like, why did you just do that? But then we're gonna take those and pop them into the fridge for at least 1 hour. And then we'll take our apples and go ahead and peel those. And now I know for the apple crisp, I talked about how much I didn't like working with apples in general. So after peeling these, I did core them. However, that will not be included in this video, because while I am okay showing you my adventure of making these pies, I will not show you the struggle it was with those apples. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. But I'm making 2 types of pies. So this first apple, I cubed. And we're adding half of the brown sugar, and then half of the sugar, cinnamon, and some of that lemon juice. And just getting that well combined. There's the first apple. And then for the second apple, again, we're just peeling it and getting it ready. And then using a mandolin to get really nice, thin slices. And because this is an apple, apples are delicious, we're taking a snack. Then using the rest of the ingredients to make the rest of the apple filling. And there that is. Then go ahead and grease 2 ramekins and set your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 177 degrees Celsius. Then it's time to get the dough back out. This is where I really wish I would have added more water or gotten them out earlier, because let me tell you, these babies were as hard as a rock. But again, This was a good learning experience. I just worked the dough with my hands, even adding a little water here and there until it was pliable enough to roll out. Now this first one was a little derpy. The next pie was much easier to roll out, and I could have shown that, but I think it's good to see videos that aren't perfect, and if I can do this, you certainly can too. And this is something I see that I've always wanted to try, which is using the rolling pin to roll out the dough onto the dish, and I think I did okay. But then of course, I had to get it to actually fit into the ramekin, which was awful because it kept ripping and folding, and I kept fixing it, and I was this close to starting and scrapping and doing it all over, but it worked out eventually. Then I rolled out the top piece, which was much easier to roll out. But then when I went to, put it on, I realized I still needed to get the apple filling, so there it goes in. And then went on the top, and we had to trim it. Then, after trimming it, I folded the outer shell over the inner shell and pressed them together, to which I think I did pretty well here. Yeah? Yeah. And then finally, to finish out this first pie, we're slicing the vent so the steam can release, and there she is. Pretty good, I'd say. This next one then, I suppose would be more traditional, but I don't know. But we'll just stack up the apple slices, and then the liquid that is left over from the pie filling we'll keep in the container and save for later. Then I wanted to try doing a cross stitch with this one, which admittedly I could have cut the strips much thinner, but in the end it did work out. Then again, once it's done, rolling up the outer shell and pressing them together, and then look at her! Oh, she's so pretty. Now we'll place them on a cooking sheet and brush them with egg wash and place them in our oven to bake for 30 to 40 minutes or until the tops are golden brown. After they come out, brush them with the liquid from the apple filling and allow them to cool. Don't touch them. Then begrudgingly, it's time to give them a taste. But they are missing something, which is vanilla bean ice cream. Now again, I'm not the biggest fan of apple desserts, but I guess these weren't too bad. The crust was crumbly and flaky, which is good. They turned out better than I thought they would. And Devin actually said this pie reminded him of his grandma's pies, which made me flabbergasted. Dat boy done had me befuddled. I was shooketh, let me tell you. And then I wanted to show y'all what the crust looked like, but then I had to pan over because this little goblin popped up her little face. But if you enjoyed this recipe, please leave a like down below and subscribe. Thank you, and we'll see you in the kitchen next time.